Welcome to Facts TV News, where everything is true. JDF soldier left immobile by hit-and-run driver at St. James checkpoint. 2 weeks ago, Jamaica Defense Force JDF Private German Rose came face-to-face with death. On November 25th, he was badly injured in a hit-and-run while on duty at the Greenwood checkpoint in the Montego Bay area of St. James. The incident left him with 2 broken legs, among other injuries, resulting in him being bedridden since that time. The driver who mowed down the young soldier remains at large as police are continuing their investigation. Speaking with a reporter from his bed at the JDF's Up Park Camp headquarters in St. Andrew, the 29-year-old recalled that on the night of the tragedy, gunshots were heard while he and his colleagues were on duty sometime after midnight. Based on those sounds, the soldiers made the decision to check the vehicles that were passing. Around 12:30 a.m., thereabout, we saw 4 cars approaching the checkpoint and we tried to slow them down. They stopped for a second and then them take time approach the checkpoint. And then they were driving cross in the road, recounted the Tower Hill St. Andrew resident. The cars, tried to hit down one of my colleagues first and he jumped out of the road. And just as I was about to jump out of the road, a car hit me and broke my 2 feet and dislocated my right hand, he said. According to Rose, the impact of the vehicle on his body resulted in him being flung in the air and landed on the sidewalk. The car did not stop. While lying on the sidewalk, he said another car grazed him as it passed. None of the vehicles stopped in that moment. Rose said he felt a lot of pain. What shocked me is when my colleagues take me up and I see my foot dangling, cause the right foot, the ankle broke right off. They had to cut off the uniform off my legs because of the pain I was going through, Rose said, who was still obviously in pain while he gave his story. Asked whether he was fearful of dying at that point, the soldier responded, "At times, but I had my 2-month-old son and I used him as my motivation." Rose was transferred to the Falmouth Hospital in Trelawney, where he said he spent a week undergoing several medical procedures and x-rays, as the left side of his hip was broken, as well as his left leg and right ankle, which have since been pinned to hold it in place. "I did x-rays about 5 times, and the doctors straightened the right leg, and I will have to do another surgery to straighten the left leg," he explained, adding that he is unable to move physically. Rose was eventually transferred to the Up Park Camp in St. Andrew, where he remains to receive further care and treatment. He is also receiving the assistance and support of family members and friends. In relation to his future in the JDF, Rose remains hopeful. The doctors will have to do a lot of therapy, the soldier said, with the pain evident in his voice as he spoke. Meanwhile, he described as unfortunate not being able to identify who was driving the vehicle that hit him that night. To that end, he is calling on anyone who would have any information in that regard to share with the police. A hard-to-end gun problem. Despite seizing 80 more firearms and 767 rounds of ammunition in 2021 than it did last year, the Jamaica Constabulary Force JCF still grapples with murders committed with the use of a gun. Just recently, cops seized 8 firearms in one weekend, which have been included in the tally of 640 removed from the streets this year, along with 8,993 rounds of ammunition. The breakdown of the firearms as provided by the JCF indicates that they seized 472 pistols, 45 rifles, 14 submachine guns, 14 shotguns, 67 revolver and 28 homemade firearms. In 2020, cops removed from the streets 43 rifles, 10 submachine guns, 20 shotguns, 378 pistols, 70 revolvers and 39 homemade guns. Even with frequent lockdowns and curfews, the fact that less incidents of shooting have occurred than in 2020, murders this year have surpassed 1,332, which is roughly a 10% increase over the corresponding period from January 1 to November 30 in 2020, when there were 1,213 slain. The St. Andrew South Police Division accounted for 156 murders, St. James 143, St. Catherine South 127, and Kingston Western 103. Other divisions island-wide recorded murder figures below 100. Commenting on the increase in murders despite the seizure of more firearms, security expert Jason McKay reported that gun seizures are great, but Jamaica being a small island with no navy, the amount of guns coming in illegally far surpasses that we would possibly seize. Other activities at our ports make it far easier for guns to be imported into the country illegally. The 640 is an incredible effort by the JCF and the Jamaica Defense Force, but will it necessarily impact crime in the long run? I say no, because there are just so much more guns. McKay added that the increase in gun seizures is an indication of the high level of crime being experienced by the nation. He pointed out that seizures usually increase when police and military operations become heightened due to high crime. He said the police and military were doing a commendable job finding the weapons, but highlighted that there are far more guns out there than they can seize. Sometimes there is a misunderstanding about gun seizures. Gun seizures goes up when operations go up. You only will have more operations when you have more homicides. The higher the crime is, the more police operations. The more police operations, the more guns are seized. If you have low crime, you won't have as much police operations, so you don't have as many guns seized. The operations are a result of high crime, and when I say high crime, I am speaking specifically to homicides, because other crimes are done, McKay noted. What will impact crime is when we start to get the guys who are using the guns, because those guys are in limited supply. As good and commendable as gun seizures are, I think we should focus a little bit more on keeping them when we catch them, he said. McKay criticized the courts for giving light sentences to people found guilty of gun-related offenses. What is happening is that we are catching them, and since we changed the Bail Act, they are getting bail. We are convicting them, but since we changed the Gun Court Act with easy fines, low fines, and non-custodial sentences, they are going back out there, he argued. Let us say there probably are 1 million guns out there, but there are 10,000 gangsters, and most of them have seen the gun court. We have a revolving door, either by bail or by low sentences in the gun court. We have to somehow revisit the Bail Act constitutionally and remove it from the gun offenses, and then we need to look out about going back to the 20 to 25-year sentences for the possession of a firearm. Anything else is just flexing muscles, but will not have an impact nationally, McKay noted. PM says strong tourism linkages to all sectors could boost the economy. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says more attention must be given to connecting all sectors in the country to the tourism industry in order to boost the economy. He was speaking at the grand opening of the Ocean Eden Bay Hotel in Coral Springs, Trelawney.
For the 60th year, we must spend more time on the linkages between tourism and the rest of the economy. Now, there are linkages, obviously, but those linkages need to be strengthened. And it is not a policy position which says we are to enforce linkages. It's a policy position which is saying that these linkages must emerge organically, where people who are investing in Jamaica see it more efficient and more profitable and better business sense to buy here than to seek them overseas. Already, we know our utility sector benefits from tourism, but agriculture can benefit much more from tourism. Manufacturing can benefit much more from tourism. But there is one area which I think it's a low-hanging fruit, and we need to spend some more time on it, is to integrate in a far more strategic way our entertainment and cultural sector. I think much more can be done for that, and it is a low-hanging fruit. For our 60th year, we need to see an institute that is going to train persons in entertainment and culture, so that the offerings are not just unidimensional, so that our local persons who are naturally talented, naturally gifted, can be exposed to a wide variety of other forms and areas of entertainment that they themselves can become professionals in. And I think the tourism industry could give Jamaica this as a gift for our 60th year.
Jamaica becoming a republic must not be empty symbolism, says PM. For the first time since Barbados severed colonial ties with Britain on November 30th, Prime Minister Andrew Holness yesterday commented publicly about calls for Jamaica to follow suit. The move, he said, must not be empty symbolism. One thing that I have reflected on, and that is the nation, is as the nation does. There are some people who want to speak prosperity into being, speak serenity and independence into being. My philosophy is that we must do things into being. We must make them happen. It must not be empty symbolism. It must be genuine. It must be born of action, that what we say we are. It is what we are in our actions and in our achievements and in what we have done, Holness said cryptically. He was speaking at the official opening of the 444th All-Inclusive Ocean Eden Bay by age 10 in Jelani. I am building towards the aspiration. I spend my time not arguing over these things. I spend my time doing, because the greatest frustration is a dream not achieved, the Prime Minister added. He hinted that discussions are underway, promising to say more at the appropriate time. I'm certain those who have ears to hear those vague terms will understand them until it is time to have that full and direct disclosure, which the process has started, Holness said. The issue has been discussed for years, but the 40th anniversary of independence starts as one of the earliest target dates for Jamaica to become a republic. Almost 20 years later, the debate is just as fierce. It's just amazing the potential that exists. 60 years of independence and the 68th year has generated much interest in our status as a nation, and those questions will be addressed shortly, Holness noted. Former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson is among those who waded into the recent debate, calling on Holness and opposition leader Mark Golding to sit and discuss the way forward into moving Jamaica to republic status. On Sunday, Attorney General Marlene Malahoud-Ford reported that an announcement is expected by the end of the second quarter of next year. Holness, she said, has already given instructions for the Constitution to be amended. The work has actually commenced before, and it is going to be done. It is going to be an involved process, but I am happy that it will begin in earnest, said the Attorney General. The last major review of the Constitution took place in 2010. At that time, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was amended. Crime, crash cases burden hospitals as holidays near.
It's been a terrible year for accidents and gunshot injuries flooding the hospitals, which simply means that your staff is coming under greater stress. And then we have the issue of motor vehicle crashes. What is the plan should this worsen?
You mean over this season?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, the plan for each hospital, every hospital have their contingency plans in how it is that they deal with the increased number of cases that they see coming to the end of the year. And right now we are seeing those increasing numbers already. And it is usually, you know, the hospitals are able to cope in terms of bringing on additional hours sometimes in terms of work. But the additional plans in terms of beds capacity, we don't have much demand usually to go beyond what we presently have. But fortunately, we would have increased the number of beds in some of our facilities, so we would be able to accommodate that. In terms of the staff, it is a time of year when the staff tend to come under a lot of pressure, especially in the operating theaters. We don't have much room for improving the human resources at this time, and so we normally bring on persons to do sessional work. And we usually have take-up, but it is understandable that persons are tired. It is a difficult time when the numbers increase, you know, and it does take a lot of extra work to get through this period.
I know Dr. Abrams has an intervention he wants to make, but let's go a little bit beyond that. So what if this rate continues into next year and probably into the other year, with gunshot injuries flooding in your hospitals, injuries coming as a result of crashes?
These are not these are not short-term fixes, and some of the infrastructure that we are putting in will help to deal with these problems. So, for example, at St. Ansby Regional Hospital, what is being planned in this project is an ICU that we're putting in, because we know that there is a demand, especially with the number of crashes that occur on the North Coast highways. And so we tend to usually get a lot of transfers in for head injuries into Kingston and St. Andrew. So with the intensive care unit, the expansion of that, both the ICU beds and high dependency beds, we would be able to cope better with that. And also with the putting in of radiological services for CT and MRI at that hospital, that would also improve their capacity to manage. There is going to be an expansion also of their emergency department, in that we're taking out the outpatient department out of the present accident and emergency department, which would give them more space to be able to deal with the increased load of patients. So it's not there are no immediate fix when it comes to those kind of infrastructure, but certainly the plans are there. For Spanish Town Hospital, what we're putting in are new operating theaters, I think it's 5 or 6 new operating theaters that will help them to be able to better manage in terms of their caseload. But then we're also putting in additional 100 beds there that would also assist with the surgical capacity, because these are supposed to be surgical beds, and we're putting in an ICU and HDU within that facility, expanding their radiological services to also include CT and MRI, and their lab services as well. So that also will assist in the management of these problems.
Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell for daily updates.